Well, we have joining us now to discuss Nigeria's multiple concurrent budgets, Dr. Nnameka Oberi, a development economist and investment banking executive. It's great to have you on the morning show. It's a cold morning, but I know we're about to feel the heat.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning.
Yes, I mean, you know what's going on with these concurrent budgets. I was reading an article by Budget that raised concerns about the risk of resource scarcity due to these overlapping budgets. Now, when you think about the revenues projected for 2024, potentially being stretched across 4 different budgets, what could be the long-term implications for service delivery in the key social sectors?
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we need to understand something here. You know, I got a bit worried when the National Assembly passed a resolution that they are going to run 2 budgets in 1 year, 2023, 2024. Because one, a budget is not just something you pluck from the moon. A budget clearly is a framework that provides guides on how government spends money and how it sources resources that it will use to, carry out expenditure. And I want to take us back. In 2003, President Olusegun Obasanjo was the first person that initiated a program that was aimed at providing transparency, accountability in the process of budget creation in Nigeria. That was how the medium-term expenditure framework came to be. Of course, it was given legal teeth in 2007 through the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And the whole arrangement was for you to have a midterm 3-year plan, provide development plan, strategic plan on how government will spend monies and how they will source money. Of course, there are basic assumptions that underline every of such budgeting process. Now, the 2023 budget was based on certain assumptions. Assumptions of revenues, assumptions of expenditures, and how those revenues will be sourced, either through productivity or either through borrowing. Same for 2024. Now, let us not lose sight of the fact that in every budget, there are 2 sides of the budget: the recurrent and the capital budgeting. The recurrent expenditure is expected to lapse within 1 year, but the capital expenditure can overlap over years. Whether you're building roads, you're building bridges, or you're building houses, it must overlap beyond 1 year. And of course, that is why we had the provision of the MTEF. The MTEF is there to provide a guide, a foundation, so that even in the subsequent years, assuming you are building a road, and road is supposed to cost, say, for example, hypothetically 100 billion. And of course, you may not source the whole revenue for that road in that year. The MTEF provides that for the years, or the year of budgeting, you can say, okay, we're going to provide 25% funding. And then it's rolled over into the second year. Your plan is. Now, there's a problem here. They weren't specific. The capital budget that they want to roll over, was it provided in the MTEF? That's the question that we need to answer. Or are they just rolling over the whole thing, both recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure, when recurrent expenditures have actually elapsed? The problem, I think, is actually in the National Assembly. Because we've always maintained the budgeting process in Nigeria has never been very transparent. If you go to, there's no nation or individual or company that builds without first of all sitting down to count cost. There's no developed nation. Go and look at the 10 most developed economies in the whole world. They have rolling plans of what they will do, how they will do it, and when they will do it. And we must not lose sight of this fact that they must have to come out clean. Is it the capital budget, that the capital portion that is being rolled over? If the capital portions are being rolled over, where was it provided? In the MTEF. It is very, very specific. But if you say you're rolling over everything, we pass resolution, move everything over to 2024, what of the recurrent expenditure portion that has elapsed? It is going to give room for manipulations, for corruption, and National Assembly is supposed to provide oversight functions over the MDAs. Yes. Whereas the president, yes, is the head of the executive arm of government, but the president is not omniscient, is not omnipresent. We are talking about 1,300 MDAs. And of course, if you go to the National Assembly, we have committees for different sectors of the economy. These committees are supposed to be knowledgeable. They're supposed to have legislative aids that will guide them. When these things are presented, they should question it one after the other. There is nothing wrong in lifting projects from the preceding year to the current year, but there must be scientific approach to what. That is where the problem is. They have not defined, are we doing capital expenditure or are we running over the whole thing, hook, line, and sink? That is the challenge here we're having here now. So they need to define what they are doing. And again, just like a family, when you wake up every morning, You plan what you want to do. In the beginning of the year, all of us have a yearly plan. We have school fees, we have housing, we have everything to pay. You plan it. Nigeria is the only country where our budgeting president, those in the MDAs just wake up, they look at the balance sheet, they just add numbers. That is why you will see a budget, go and check most of our budget, take time to do an excursion. You will see the same line item that was in 2022. Yes. You will see it in 2023. You see it in 2024. Because
sometimes with the same figure.
There is no rigor. There is no scientific approach. And it will help us when we put in place these things. And again, and that is also, budgets are built, like now, 2024 budget was on assumptions. I'll give you an example. We have a revenue assumption. The 2024 budget was such that we said, okay, we're going to have deficit of 9.9 trillion. That will be funded through borrowing. And then we're going to have revenues of about 16 trillion. And now if you look at it, those revenue projections were based on assumptions. Crude oil output, 1.78 million barrels a day. Today, we've not done anything more than 1.4 million barrels. And we've almost done half year. We're even entering the last, entering the second half of the year. Now, nobody who is an organization or government will set up a budget and he will not be monitoring it weekly, monthly, yearly. I'll give you an example. If you go to a Zenith Bank or a GT Bank or Standard Trust Bank or even any government agency that is properly run, even LNNG that is owned 51% by the private sector and 49% by government, if they employ you, they give you as a KPIs, key performance indicators, because their balance sheet and budgeting process is based on certain numbers they must accomplish in that year. And they assess you. 6 months down the line, probation period, you don't achieve it, they will give you extra 2 months. You don't achieve it, they fire you. But in the public sector, it's yo. Everybody continues the same roller coaster. And that is why we are where we are. So they must come out clean. Okay. National Assembly need to play their role. That is where the ball is being dropped.
All right, that's actually where I'm going. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of institutional memory around this thing. Is this the first time that you'll be witnessing something like this? I recall within the time frame of 2022, 2023, there was a kite flown about the possibility of running 2 budgets at the same time in Nigeria. And I recall that Solomon Olamilekan Yayi, I think the chairman of the appropriation of or public finance in the Senate, came out to defend, which sounded more like an explanation of why 2 budgets under Buhari at that time, but in the last 1 year of Buhari, was being run concurrently. Are we back to that period, or they're now validating the idea of running multiple budgets, even though I think part of what was communicated was that it will come from the capital expenditure of the supplementary budget for 2023.
Yes.
What powers does the National Assembly have to engage in multiple kind of appropriation, multiple budget, not just 2, now we're talking about 4. How does this speak to fiscal responsibility?
Like I said, the problem here is in the usage of word, the nuances, and National Assembly to be present. And like I said, there is nothing wrong in doing capital projects over periods of years, you understand, over a number of years. But the problem is there must be an MTF. There must be a medium-term expenditure framework, strategically where these plans are laid out. The problem is the nation. You see, I have once advocated that for anybody to be in National Assembly, there should be periodic training program. Periodic training program in accounting, in finance, in public finance management, so that they don't run foul of the law or make when people say run into, because it's the use of term. There's nothing like running. You can't run 2-year budgets in 1 year. It simply means what they should have simply done was, okay, look at the MTF. For example, now, assuming that was a capital project to do road, like I said, it must run through years. Now, the question is, was it contained in the medium-term expenditure framework? Yeah. It's for them, that's okay. Okay, for example, now, if there was an MTF for 3 years, that's okay, we're going to do 80 trillion naira over 3 years. You have to break it down. Right. That 80 trillion naira simply means what comes out in 2023, 2024, 2025. Yes. Now, based on this MTF, when you're projecting revenue or borrowing for a particular project, I'll give you an example. That the second Niger bridge, You could see clear that there was a 10 billion that was provided by Jonathan government before he left office. If they had followed the MTF, you will have seen that there was a provision for how much will be spent on the second year, on the third year. But before Buhari came and they overhauled the whole thing. The challenge is the usance of what? The use of what? That is the problem here. There is not a case of running to. If they are saying they are rolling over the whole budget, both the capital and the recurrent expenditure, without looking at the provisions of the MTF, that is where they will say to be running foul of the law. But if that is why it's so they need to come out clean. Are they running two budgets parallel? That is fouling the law.
Can it be allowed at all that recurrent expenditure will cross over to
no, it's unacceptable. You cannot run recurrent expenditure. It's supposed to terminate in 2003, 2024. But if it's capital expenditure, it's allowed. Of course, you can carry it over 5 years. I'll give an example. I've always maintained that the most lucrative railroute in Nigeria is the Lagos, Shagamu, Ijebu-Ode, Ore, Benin, Asaba, Onitsha, Owerri, Port Harcourt, Sako Bakaba, to Umuahia, to Abakaleke, all the way back to Onitsha. We've done the number. It's a 716 kilometer railroute. It will take about $5.2 billion to do. That railroute has 200 million cargo ton traffic per annum. Over 400 million passenger traffic per annum. The study have been conducted. That road can be done through a PPP arrangement where government, the states, the contiguous 9 states and the federal government own some percentage shares in the SPV. The private sector investor owns 30%, either a Deutsche Bank group or any of the established rail company. Now, for example, assuming the federal government is, and the state cut off is about 1.3 trillion. They cannot put that 1.3 trillion in 1 year. It may go over 5 years. Yeah. But the private sector investor can put in his own money at the same time, or as maybe on milestone basis. In such, if when you're preparing an MTF or a budget to cover those periods, there should be a plan on how to source for funding, whether through fiscal revenue or through borrowing, to cover your own counterpart funding. But the current expenditure for that, you can't carry current expenditure to next year. There must be capital provision every year. The problem we have is, like I always said, is the National Assembly. These guys, they just sit down, whatever is passed to them, they will just do first reading, second reading, third reading. They will just approve it. And that is where the change is. They are not helping the president. You only help the president when you provide oversight function. On the MDAs, you ask questions. Okay, example, we said we are going to do 1.78 million barrels a day. We are not doing 1.4. What is happening? Who is being questioned? What is holding it down from us doing what we're supposed to do? We are going to build a refinery and repair it from 2021 to 2023. We are in 2024, going to the end of the 2024. Nothing is being refined. No question asked. Nobody question. You said to us, okay, we consume so much volume every day. All of a sudden, the number goes up 100%, 50%. Nobody's asking questions. And that is the challenge we have in Nigeria. There is no rigor. There's no focus, there's no discipline, there's no scientific approach to governance at that level, and which is very worrisome.
It's not sufficient.
See, okay, use the word. It's not sufficient, because if we are doing what we're supposed to, I always say this country ticks the right boxes to become a top 10 biggest economy in the whole world. South Korea in 1970 was way behind us. South Korea GDP was 9.75 billion. Our own was 12 billion, 12.3 billion. Go and check the records. Today, South Korea, 52 million people. $1.6 trillion GDP. Nigeria, 218 million people. $252 billion GDP. I'll give you an example. Access Bank in 2005 had a balance sheet, shareholders fund of 25 billion. Today, years later, Access Bank balance sheet is almost about 2.6 trillion naira. You could see growth. And I can tell you, if you look at the Access Bank plan, you could have seen how they plan to get from 2005 to where they are today. Nobody stumbles or praise himself into success.
That's right.
There must be plan, there must be focus, there must be strategy, there must be scientific knowledge on what you're going to do, when you will do it, how you do it, or what you will do it. What has helped countries like Norway, countries like Singapore, countries like Malaysia, countries like South Africa, because there is plan, there is consistency. But the problem, let me tell you the problem we have in Nigeria. A government comes into play. And of course, is this level of corruption in Nigeria. You saw what the EFCC chairman said during his confirmation hearing. He said between 2018 and 2020, over 2.9 trillion was stolen through over invoicing. So basically what most of these guys in MDA do, not everybody, is that When contracts are awarded, of course, they even disburse 70% ahead. No milestone. And then the man who is helping them will cream out their own portion and give to them. And so when the next government comes into place, everybody is looking for where they can keep their own money. So to continue with the old project simply means the contract has been awarded, money has been creamed out. So they pack it one side and they start a new thing. So that is the problem we have here in Nigeria. There is no rigor, there is no process in the procurement of things in Nigeria, even in award of contracts. So, but we need to get it right. We can't keep on lamenting and being at this level. We must get it right. And if we get it right in this country, I tell you, this country is a blessed land. This is one country that can export over $375 billion non-oil resources, goods and services. This is one country that can take over 197 million in poverty, out of poverty within the next 5 years. But we need to have leadership that is focused, leadership that has passion and creativity. And you know the very funny thing here, these guys can actually make so much money without stealing.
Yeah.
By true creative, they can make so much money without looting. I'll give you an example. A governor who put in place the right PPP framework to attract $2 billion into his state over the next 4 years. Even if there's an SPV created and his crony is half 10-20% in that SPV, he makes almost about $50 million till he dies every year. But he will have done one thing. He will have created massive job in his state. He will have grown GDP by $2 billion. He will have removed poverty in his state. But these guys, all they think about is, how do we get this out? And that is why you see them, they don't pay emphasis on education, which is actually the key ingredient that will take us out of poverty. Because look at the 10 global biggest economies, 98% literacy rate. Look at the last 10, which Nigeria belongs to. Literacy level of actually less than 60%. Just look at it. They don't pay emphasis on education, on health, on social investment that will help us take out of poverty. Just that's why they give people pizzas and all those stuff. The truth is, all they do is award road contracts, do flyovers, those things that can enable them over-invoice and quickly make money. And nations are not built that way. And we must understand this.
That's right.
I mean, you've definitely analyzed the political dynamics, really the relationship between the executive and the legislative branches, really when it comes to situations like this when we're having 4 concurrent budgets. And you've highlighted on some solutions, but I want us to hone more on that because we know what's going on. And it's really sad when you think about, like you said, how much progress. We have a clear idea of what's going on. So when we talk about long-term solutions and sustainable practices, what long-term strategies would you advise this government to adopt to be able to, prevent the recurrence of, these budgeting anomalies and ensure sustainable fiscal management going forward? Yes. Okay.
I think you remember that when the Buhari government came into power, they came up with this idea of zero budgeting, and everybody clapped. Zero budgeting simply means
ZBB.
Yes, from the foundation. Of course, that's how it should be. You don't just wake up and you just do 2% you put on top. There are dynamics, there are microeconomic factors that guide even your budgeting. Yeah. Now, what would they do? It's already proven that the public audit arrangement we have in Nigeria is not working. The likes of KPMG, PwC, Deloitte should be involved in Nigerian budgeting process. Very, very important among the MDAs, across the MDA, they should be involved. And the auditing of these MDAs should also involve them. And that is the truth, because what we have seen over time is there is no transparency, there's no accountability. The whole essence of the Fiscal Responsibility Act was to provide rigor, to provide transparency and accountability in the process of budget creation. But it's practically absent in all the 3 tiers of government. And number 2, the issue of knowledge is very, very important. This guy should sometimes sit back. When Dr. Michael Opara became the premier of the old Eastern Nigeria, he was a medical doctor, 39 years. He wasn't an economist. What did he do? He sought for the Littleton Group, a top consulting group in the US, and they came together and they built him a massive framework on what to do to build a 214-kilometer industrial belt. And within 7 years, he accomplished it. He had the fastest growing economy in the whole of Commonwealth nations. He had an economy that was at 9.5% per annum. In fact, he had everything tied up. His security arrangement, his local police was more efficient than the federal police, as testified even by both local and international observers. Now, the truth is, some of these guys, they like to surround themselves with people that will tell them what they want to hear. People that will help them to cream out. They should seek for help. There's nothing, it's not yet too late. I expect National Assembly, the senators and the House of Rep members, they have so much budget. Some of them take almost about 27 million, 37 million. And if you look at what they take, they should, on their salary scale, you see where they provided funds for legislative aids. They should not just go and hire those that will carry back for them. They should hire professionals that will guide them, that will advise them. And you know, another point that they're not actually providing oversight function. In Nigeria today, there is this belief that oversight function is just a way of putting pressure on the MDS to release their own portion of the largesse. If we have real oversight functions over the MDS, things will be strengthened up. Like I said, we must have plans sector by sector. I'll give you an example. Vietnam today, 300,000 square kilometer land, 100 million people. They do 27 million tons of rice every year. Nigeria, we are doing 5.2 million tons, which is less than our 7.5 million domestic consumption. We can actually do 27 million tons, like Vietnam. We have the right demography, we have the right temperate environment, we have everything. But we need to sit down and say, okay, how do we integrate, have a handshake between the federal government, the state and local government area to cultivate scientifically, right? Something that can be done in a year. How do we build this output to 27? We can do it. On the palm, as at 1964-65, Nigeria was controlling 40% of the global palm oil supply market. Today, that market is $72 billion size, controlled by Indonesia and Malaysia, that came to Calabar over a century ago to pick the seedlings. The question is, our current domestic consumption is about 2.3 million tons. Our supply, domestic supply is about 1 million tons. How do we build up across the value chain to cover the domestic supply gap and be able to supply to the west of Africa? It can be done. It's scientific planning. And it's not the federal government that will do it though. It's mostly the states and the local government within the Palm Belt. Today, a ton of cocoa is selling for $10,400. The Southwest alone can produce about 2-3 million tons of cocoa over the next 4 years if they want to do it. The Cocoa Research Institute of Ibadan is there for them to do. The Southwest alone can generate 3 times what they receive from FAC and Jack, from cocoa export alone. Not just the dry cocoa, processing it. We can do it. Netherlands does almost about $24 billion from the dairy value chain, from beef, from milk. With just 1.6 million cows in 18,300 dairy centers. In Nigeria, we have over 14 million kwashiorkor cows that produce no milk. We can set up clusters of farms across Nigeria that can enable us to even do ×4 what Netherlands is doing. But these things require planning, requires rigor, requires discipline. But these guys do not have that discipline, don't have that patience. All they want is what they can just do quickly to make money. But they forgot that, okay, you saw the report the other time, that they had over $1 billion worth of properties in Dubai. How many people from the United Arab Emirates have a property in Nigeria? How many American politicians have property here in Nigeria? It's a question we should ask us. In 1970, Dubai was just a desert-infested and snake and reptile-infested desert. Today, look at where they are. They've created paradise out of desert. They have oil reserve like Nigeria. They have crude oil output. But today, oil accounts for less than 5% of their annual revenue. We can do the same thing. Right. But we need to have these guys. We beg them every time. Look inward, show mercy, show compassion. Put some little rigor and discipline. Okay. The other day, we spent 21 billion building a coffin-like house that wouldn't have taken 1.2 billion naira for any private sector investor to build.
They say it was a completion of what?
It doesn't make sense. We should ask ourselves. People are watching. It's not
true.
Right.
That's true. But doctor, let me go back to the core of the discussion. Peter Obi has weighed in, and he says that it is irresponsibility of the IS order. There are a few other commentators who are saying that, well, it depends on how it is executed. So back to what you're saying, it is the fact that we do not have clarity. How do you think, or shall we say, do you think that this is a commentary on the performance of the budget office, given the fact that a baton has just been passed from Ben Akabwize to Tanimu Yakubu, who, by the way, are not new in government or to know what they are doing? Do you think there is a commentary on the performance of that budget office?
Of course, like rightly pointed out, Ben is no longer there. And of course, there's a new man there. Now, the question is it a case of what the new man is bringing to the table? But I don't think it is so. I think the challenge here, I always take it to where it is. Who has the power of appropriation? It's National Assembly.
Yeah.
If the budget office brings something that is not in tandem with what National Assembly wants, they will ask them to take it back. The whole bulk falls on the table of the National Assembly. They are the ones with the power to appropriate and to, allocate.
Yeah, but haven't been appropriated. Shouldn't the budget office make clarifications to Nigerians as to the types of budgeting that they are running?
Of course, that is why I've said they need to clarify. They need to explain to us, are they rolling over the capital project or the recurrent expenditures alongside the capital? If it's capital project, can they tie it to the MTF?
If it is capital project, can they be for? Can the budgets be for supplementary main budget?
It cannot be. Yes, it's a use of terms. There's no way forward can run at the same time. That is why they need to come out clean and clarify things. Because there's one thing about Nigeria. Everybody is an expert in every field. Once something is dropped, people will not seek clarification. They will run to the market. I don't believe that they are running 4 budgets at the same time. I want to believe that it's a rollover of capital projects over these pockets of provisions. Now, what they need to do is just to call us, okay, see, hey guys, this is the MTF. This is where these things were provided for. Yeah. This is where the monies were meant for this. These monies had been disbursed. It is in the account. It has not been dispatched. It has not been utilized. Like, for example, now, assuming that was a 10 billion naira was provided for a road, and only 6 billion had been disbursed, had been expended out of the disbursed fund in 2023. And they need to clearly state that yes, we actually provided 10 billion in the budget for 2023. The money is there, but only 6 billion have been disbursed. Remaining 4 billion. Is that 4 billion we're taking over? We need to see it. You cannot use the revenue for projects in 2024 to execute for that 2023. It will be there. Of course, there will be positive of fund.
Because what you're saying is what will most likely happen to the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road, because it has to spill over.
It has to spill over 5-8 years. So they just is for Taminu to come out and say, okay, hey, he can even hold a press conference. Like I always said, communication is very key in governance. There is no over information. You need to keep on feeding information. In fact, it's possible there's something fun here. If I am a minister, I'll be holding weekly press briefing. I'll be holding monthly press briefing. I'll be telling people what we are. There's nothing that boosts confidence. That's when people are okay. Transparency and accountability is the bedrock of democratic governance. This is your money. It's not our money. The money belongs to the people. This is what we are doing. That is why Bosun, you can see what Bosun Tijani does it. You will see Bosun every time telling people what he's doing. He's on social media. He's on Twitter. He's answering questions. So all the other ministers should be out there. If I'm the Minister of Petroleum Resources or the NNPC group, I will be in Port Harcourt. My head office will be in Port Harcourt. I will be in the field to ensure that those refineries are working, to ensure that outputs come up. I must be there. People will see that I'm there. If I'm the Minister for Maritime, for Blue Economy, or what, or Customs, I will be in Lagos or One. I will be near the source of where the thing is happening. When your people know you're there, that you're breathing down their neck, they will do things more. When the customs guys know that our guy is here to know how fast it takes us to clear containers or to contain, everybody will sit up.
Correct.
I don't know if you watch this thing, this Bovi skit that Bovi created, visa on arrival. Sometimes when Charity and I misbehaving, when the supervisor comes there and sits over them, you will see that they start doing well. But when he's not there, they will start playing their games.
Quality messaging through comedy.
Exactly. So we need to, it's an exciting thing to be called to serve.
Yes.
It's an honor to be called to serve your people, and people should carry it with dignity and with responsibility that comes with it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nwa-aba. We always appreciate your time and analysis here on The Morning Show.